Hello everyone and welcome to the Dugout. I am Picken, I'm your host, and we are talking Blue Jays baseball, and I'm here with my co-host and younger brother.
How's it going?
Kyle Picken. And so today is just sort of a fly by the seat of our pants. Let's see what kind of baseball talk we can come up with. And
we never talk about baseball,
No, never. That's we drive our family crazy whenever we get together. That's all we talk about. So we're also coming to you on the video screen over here. So if you're listening, you don't see me pointing right now, but if you are watching, you are listening to me and seeing me point. So we got all sorts of multimedia going on. So at this point in time, we just, Canada just got knocked out of the World Baseball Classic, and I think that's maybe what we can start off talking about for the first few minutes, because I guess what, unfortunately, people are talking more about than anything is the brawl that happened with Mexico, not even the loss to the U.S. And it's interesting because there's basically, in my opinion, there's two perspectives. You're either for it or against it in terms of the brawl itself, because people are just like it's ridiculous, people shouldn't be fighting, and then you've got people going, well we're Canadian and everyone fights in hockey. I mean, even Don Cherry was like, hey, yeah, go get them, boys. Did you see them jerseying them? And it's
did you see the next game against the U.S. There was a bunch of fans wearing hockey helmets?
Right, exactly. So I don't know, what's your take on it? I know you didn't get to see it live, but what's your perspective on it?
Well, I can understand kind of why the brawl happened.
Mm-hmm.
If this was a regular season game, bunting when you're up, I think it was 8-4 at the time, or
right.
9-4. That's not called for. But I get why Ernie Witt was telling him to, because
it's run differential.
It's
right.
a huge part, right? So,
but it's not like Mexico didn't know that, though.
Oh no, I'm just wondering if they were caught up in the heat of the moment and they knew, well, this game's pretty much a lost cause. This is our last game. Who cares if we get suspended? I don't know. It was the third baseman that really started the whole thing.
Yes.
He was telling the pitcher
throw at the next guy. Yeah. And it's funny because, funny maybe isn't even the right word, but when you take a look at what a typical bench clearing brawl is in baseball, it's usually a lot of pitching and shoving.
Yep.
And if you see someone throwing a punch, it doesn't even look like a proper punch. It's more just a bunch of tempers getting out of control, and then everything gets put back to normal. But this
when Pedro Martinez threw
Boston's coach, what was his name?
I can't remember his name.
Zimmer.
It was Zimmer.
That's right.
Yeah,
Don Zimmer.
Big
Yeah. But I mean, it's a sort of thing where when you look at the replays there, that to me is a good indication of the type of intensity that, because everyone's like, oh, it's the World Baseball Classic, no one cares about it. But when you take a look at how fired up those guys were, and it really did look like a hockey fight. Guys were being jerseyed and bombs were being thrown. And I'm not necessarily for fighting in baseball, but I can appreciate protecting your teammates, and I can appreciate that. Okay, if it's obvious that you're throwing at me, then we're gonna have issues.
Yeah, of course.
It seems silly to me why it happened. And yes, Major League Baseball, you're running up the score on the other team, then you're kind of rubbing salt in open wound.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it's unfortunate from the perspective that it's a tournament that was maybe only taken half seriously by some of the teams. Do you think that it would be an advantage to hold the tournament at a different time of year, or to do the format differently, or to have less countries involved? Because it's not getting the support that it needs to be successful.
Have you seen some of the attendance? Even the U.S. against Canada, in Phoenix, there were 24,000 people.
Right.
In a stadium that holds double that.
Right.
I think
when we went to the game that it was at the Dome, Canada-US, it was
packed.
Yeah.
But that's also kind of the market down
Sure.
south.
Yeah.
But I think holding it at a different time of year might be a consideration.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but then you look at it, well, when?
Right.
You could do maybe kind of like what hockey does with the Olympics, where they take a couple weeks off in the middle of the season. But then you could see a lot of teams saying, well, no, I need my players for, you know, the rest of the season. We're making a playoff push, blah, 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 blah. I don't want them getting hurt.
What about at the end of the season after the World Series?
That could be a consideration, which might be better. And then you wouldn't have, you know, I wouldn't see the need for the pitch counts that they have on the pitchers. You know, 65. What is that? They can throw 3-4 innings.
Yeah, no kidding. The issue I think with that though is that unless you've got guys who are in the playoffs, then you're going to have guys who have a month to have to stay in shape before the WBC starts. And for a lot of guys, when you know they're looking forward to having, you know, that season end. As an example, if you're playing for Seattle or Kansas City and your season doesn't mean anything, or let's just say that you are on a team that is in a playoff race and you don't make the playoffs and you've been playing through injuries, as many of them do, you know, knowing that, well, hey, if I can stick it out for a few more weeks and maybe we can get into the playoffs, I'm going to play through this injury. That's someone who's going to be sitting out of the WBC if, you know, they've been nursing an injury for the last 3 weeks.
To get ready for next season, right? So it really, when do you put?
It's a shame because it has potential, but you know, when you don't have the full support of the Americans, and who knows, maybe it's the Maple Leaf syndrome. You know, that's they don't need to put the best players on the ice because they're still selling tickets. With Team USA, they're not putting the best guys on the field, but they're playing okay.
I heard I listened to an interview with Dickey, and they were asking Dickey, you know, why isn't this as popular as it can be? And he was saying for America, he thinks that the States needs to win in order to bring that interest there. So I could foresee maybe if they won this year, that the attendance might go up next year, the popularity might go up among Americans. It's a possibility.
You know, one thing for sure is that and I'm going to sound really strange saying this, and you know, I almost wrote a blog post on it, and I didn't get around to it, but you know, it was unfortunate that Brett Laurie was injured and wasn't able to play. But in my mind, it was almost maybe a blessing in disguise.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, let's face it. He's someone who goes 110% all the time. The injury could have been a lot worse, and can you imagine him in the middle of that brawl with Mexico? We'd be looking at a Brett Laurie with a broken hand right now because
he was at the game. Was he not in the brawl?
No, I think he already had been sent back to Florida, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay, well, because I know I watched.
I could be wrong, but
it was the first game against Italy, and I saw him like in the dugout. So I don't know if he was at the
okay, I was under the impression that he was being sent back to Florida.
Okay, well,
I can only picture him flying onto the field in the middle of that brawl and breaking his hand on some Mexican's face. No, really, but I have nothing against Brett Laurie, and honestly, like if I was on a baseball team in a brawl, I'd want him on my team, not the other team. Absolutely. But I don't know. It's just it's a shame because you want to be able to get behind a sport that you love, and with international play, there's so much potential there.
Yes, there is.
But it seems that it's taking a backseat to MLB, and I don't know. I don't know what the solution is.
Well, I think it's a great event. I love seeing, you know, the Netherlands beat Cuba the other day. And before we started the show, I was looking at the score. They were tied 6-6 in the ninth. Whichever team, again, Netherlands and Cuba again, whichever team won from there makes it on to the next round. So the Netherlands could knock out Cuba, which would be
enormous.
Huge upset.
Wow. Well, hey, if you are listening to this right now and you have any suggestions, go to thebluejaysdugout.com. Or if you're watching on YouTube right now, youtube.com/thebluejaysdugout, leave a comment there. We'd be curious to know what your thoughts are, because this really, I mean, we would like this to be an open-ended discussion. So, I'm not really good at segues, so we're just going to jump right now into Blue Jays baseball, because that really is the the major focus of what we do here most of the time. So yeah, right now the Jays are they back at 500 in spring training now? A game under?
I think they're a game under because they lost.
Right, so they're a game under. Okay. What's your take on the pitching situation right now? Because we've got it was set out from the beginning. Here's our 5 guys. And yet now you've got Romero still struggling. You've got Happ looking really good. You've got Cecil struggling. What's your take on what could and should happen?
Well, it's still early in spring training.
Mm-hmm.
There's still 3.5 weeks left. So you can't jump the gun now and say Romero's looking terrible and Happ's looking good. Happ's our new pitcher.
Right. No,
number 5. You can't do that. But if this continues, then the Jays have an issue on their hands.
Mm-hmm.
The main reason I think that they were set out from the get-go that Ricky was their guy is because he's out of options.
Right.
And Happ isn't. So they can start Happ in AAA and not be worried about...
Which he'll be super ticked about.
Oh,
because,
he will.
And he's already expressed that hey,
Mm-hmm.
I'm a major league pitcher, and that's what I need to be doing right now. And he did look good in yesterday's game.
He did. So it's... I don't know. It's difficult to say. I like Ricky as an individual. I think he's he had some great seasons. It's just whatever happened the second half of last season. I'm hoping it's not going to continue this year.
Right.
I was hoping that with the pressure being off him of not having to be the ace
Mm-hmm.
would really help him. Now again, it is early in spring training and. Who knows, he may turn another leaf just the next outing. You don't know, right? That's the beauty of baseball.
Well, and that's the other thing, too, is that we really are only seeing, each guy get 2, 3, 4 innings.
Right.
And Dickey will be the first one to tell you that, hey, it's entirely likely I'm going to have a shaky couple first innings, or there's just going to be that one inning where they get 3 or 4 runs. Difference being that he has enough confidence in his ability to settle into a groove, and he's going to take the game into the 6th or 7th or 8th inning and be able to hand it over after having only that one bad inning. Whereas Romero, at least not last year, was able to demonstrate that he is able to get past that bad inning to be able to take that game deep, because that's where maybe not as much of a concern this year because their bullpen is so much deeper, and they've got guys that most of them have 200 inning potential over the course of the season. But with Romero, it seems like a confidence issue. But how long do you let it be an issue? How long is that rope that you're giving him?
From what I've heard, it looks like they're giving him probably, I would say, the month of April. That was kind of my estimation.
Which would be how many starts?
So once every 5 days, so maybe 4 or 5 starts, something like that.
Yeah.
So that's enough. I would say if he bombs 5 starts. And Happ's looking good in AAA. I could see the switch happening, for sure. But they may even, if Happ's really ticks starting in AAA, they could use him as trade bait too, right?
Yeah, no, I suppose they could. I don't know, what they would trade for at this point in time.
There's not.
You're better holding on to him and but again, I guess it depends on who has options and what you need to do with.
Because that's the thing. You said you mentioned Cecil before.
Right.
Cecil's out of options, and that's kind of why they were looking to have him be with the big league club. But he isn't looking too sharp so far this spring. I heard that his velocity has gone up.
Okay.
But then again, you can throw 95 and walk 10 guys, and
It was exactly like you and I were talking about with Andrew Tinish in the show previous to this, the assistant GM of the Jays. He was talking about scouting these young guys, and that's it. I mean, you get a young guy who's 6'8" and can throw the ball at 99 miles an hour, and that's fantastic. But can you put it where you want it?
Exactly. Well, some of the greatest pitchers, like look at Greg Maddux, who barely, I don't think he even threw over 90,
Right.
and he won 355 games.
Location.
Exactly. That's the big thing.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, on a plus side, you've got Santos and McGowan, who were throwing out of the bullpen just the other day, and or I guess had bullpen sessions is a more accurate way to describe it. And from what I've heard, had successful sessions.
It's great to see McGowan back in pitching. And
anything they get from him is gravy.
Yes.
Anything they get from him. I mean, it's unfortunate that he was signed that extension last year from Anthopoulos, and then no sooner than had he literally the ink I don't think had even dried that he had hurt his shoulder again. Timing is everything, right?
Yeah.
But at this point, if they can even get I don't know, 10 or 12 appearances out of him, and
that would make it worthwhile.
Absolutely, that would be the icing on the cake, I guess. And it's they have such a deep bullpen now that there's so many guys that, like we had talked about before, who are sort of sneaking up through the ranks that anything is possible. But I would really like to see him become a success story, because there's I don't know, it just
everyone loves a success story.
Absolutely. Ask Dickie, right?
Exactly.
He published his book, and it's a good one. I've read it. So we've got those guys. What do you think about the situation at third base the way that it is currently? Because Laurie, at least at this point in time, they're saying is out for 2 to 3 weeks. So we've got DeRosa starting third, who looked good yesterday. Actually, he made a really good play.
And he's had a decent spring so far. I think the last time I looked, he was hitting over 500. But that's not going to be the Mark DeRosa that you get during the regular season.
One can only hope. But not likely.
He's a career 200 hitter or something. So you can't expect that from him. I think Laurie should be there opening day. I would expect that. They say 2 to 3 weeks, so that gives him 4 or 5 maybe spring training games near the end. It'd be very tough to convince him to not play opening day.
Yeah. Now, are you just being optimistic because we're both going to be at that game? Possibly.
Partly, yes. But I think I don't know. He's the type of guy that I could see him being there opening day, or at least he'll definitely. I don't think he'll start the season on the DL.
Right.
You give him 2 to 3 weeks. I am being optimistic, but
it doesn't sound like it's a serious injury.
No, it does not.
At least that's what everyone is being told. And if that is the case, then sure. I guess where my concern would be from a managerial perspective is that you've got a guy who missed. What did he miss? A month or 2 last season?
Yes, it was about a month, I think.
Yeah, for this oblique injury. And it's a long season. It's 162 games. They're projecting that the Jays are going to be in the playoffs. They are, according to Vegas, the team to beat. They're World Series favorites this year. So it's going to go another month beyond the 162. It's a long season. Do you and of course you're absolutely right. Brett Laurie will be the first one to be like, "No, screw it, I'm fine. I'm playing." But is he maybe not starting to become just a little bit of a smarter player and understanding that, if I give my body just a little bit more rest, because he's not concerned about DeRosa taking his, the whole point of having DeRosa there is to mentor him and help him make it through the season without him killing himself by diving into camera base. I don't know. It's just I'm with you. I would love to see him opening day. I'm very optimistic that he will be ready for that. It's just a question of whether or not management is going to be able to say, okay, you're only 90%. Take another 3 games off and make sure you're 100% before we because there's no it's either on or off. There's no in between with him. right?
I read an interesting article about him the other day that said, if he continues at the rate that he's going, 110% all the time, drink 10 Red Bulls before the game, that, he'll be a 25-year-old DH, which I could end up seeing because he's apt to injure himself at every play, because he will not take, there's no break in him. There's no rest in him.
Interesting.
Which can be very exciting to watch, but also very scary to think about for the future of our club.
Well, we can only hope that he's going to get a little bit smarter as the seasons wear on, and that he maybe takes it from 110 down to 104. Possibility. I don't know. Bish, how are we doing for time over there? Just out of curiosity. Right on. Okay. Cool. We just don't want to drag on and on and on, because as we alluded to during the beginning of this...
this is going to be an hour and a half show.
Absolutely. When Kyle and I get together, this is all that we do. But anyway, what are your thoughts on Cabrera so far? Because what I've seen, in my opinion, is a really solid ball player who hits the ball hard. He's not on performance-enhancing drugs this year like he was last year, so he's not likely to hit as many home runs. But from what I've seen, he's still hitting the ball really hard. He's finding the gap. He's, down 2 strikes and fighting back to a full count. Like, he's been a very smart hitter so far in spring training.
And steroids don't make you a smart hitter.
No, of course not.
Steroids make you a Barry Bonds-like hitter, where you hit home runs all the time.
No, of course.
So, I never was worried about his ability to be an average hitter, like above average hitter, I guess I should say.
Right.
He hit last year before his ban, he was at like 346, I believe.
Yeah.
And that, of course, would have been increased a little bit by his ability to hit it an extra 10 feet over the fence.
Sure.
Some of those would have been caught. But you're not going to lose, 50 points of average with not taking steroids. So I wasn't ever worried about that. But yeah, I think he's looking good this year. And he'll definitely be a bonus in our lineup. They're slotting him probably at number 2 is what I've read.
Yeah.
I think he'll be great as someone to get on base with him and Reyes before the big bats of Bautista and Encarnacion.
And it's nice not to have to worry about a platoon anymore in left field either, because that was the thing that was supposed to be wiped out when they brought Snyder in. It was like he's going to be the franchise, and then it didn't work out, whether he was wronged or just was a 4A ball player. It's nice to know that you can have that regular left fielder to count on, and he's got a solid glove and he's got a good arm, and like you said, you put him in the 2 spot, and with Reyes in front of him, and I'm very confident that 1-2 spot there is nice, and you won't have to worry about it. Not like last year, let's try Rasmus in the 2-hole. Well, let's try him lead off a little bit. Well, you've got him down in the 8 spot, and in my mind, that's kind of where he belongs right now.
Yeah, definitely.
And it's, whether it's because the top half of the lineup is so loaded, or if it's because he's struggling a little bit, and that's kind of, he's going to be a 275 hitter, okay, that's, maybe that's where he ends up. Do you think he's going to be ready for spring training? Because he really only just came back and from his shoulder issues just the other day. And I saw him in yesterday's game, and he wasn't swinging the bat well.
Yeah, I don't know. That's definitely a concern. And if he isn't ready, then I could foresee him starting the season down on the DL, possibly ghost starting until he is ready. But then again, as I said earlier, there's still 3.5 weeks. So if he's back looking good again in a week, there shouldn't be any concerns. I'm predicting kind of a ghost call up later in the year. From what I've kind of seen from Rasmus, I would like Ghost on the team more than...
You read my mind. I've never been a Rasmus fan, and I understand that they've got to do something with him. You know, they didn't sign him to an extension to sit him on the bench. That's, you know, a very expensive thing to do.
Yeah.
But you're right. It's, you know, it's tough if Ghost is ready. You know, to just have him, and you know, he has expressed, you know, his frustrations with, hey, he thinks he's ready and he's not wanting to be in the minors. And
I think another you know half season in the minors could do him a lot of good though too.
Sure.
Just to fine tool everything. You
Right.
know, like we saw him up for about a month or two last season, and you know the bat, as Andrew had spoken to last show, isn't quite there yet.
Right.
The fielding, the base running is, and it looks awesome.
Yeah.
But we need that bat to come around, and I think that could be really helped with another half season or full season, depending on how Rasmus is doing in AAA.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, listen, I think we are just about out of time here. The time does fly when we're talking baseball. That's par for the course. So I think we're going to wind things down here. Again, my blog is thebluejaysdugout.com. Would love to hear from you. I got Facebook and Twitter and all sorts of lovely social media places to get a hold of me. I am on everything. I am more accessible than most. And YouTube as well, so if you've actually watched through all of this, congratulations, and you are a true baseball fan. So yeah, thank you again for listening, and look forward to seeing you next time.